I never thought something so small could change everything. It started on one of those long, heavy nights, the kind where time feels slow and silence feels too loud to sit in. I had come home exhausted, both physically and emotionally. My job was draining me, my relationship was shaky, and honestly, I was starting to feel like I was losing myself somewhere between responsibility and loneliness. My roommate, Daniel, had been my closest friend for almost a year. We met when I moved into this shared apartment near the city. From the beginning, he had this calm, patient energy, the kind that made you feel safe without saying a word. He was the kind of person who noticed when you were quiet, when you were off, even when you tried to hide it. That night, he noticed. I was sitting on the couch scrolling through my phone, pretending to look busy while trying to ignore the thoughts running through my head. He came in from his room holding a cup of tea and just looked at me for a moment before asking softly, "You okay, man?" It was such a simple question, but the way he said it, with actual care, made me realize how long it had been since someone asked and really meant it. I smiled weakly and nodded. "Yeah, just tired." He didn't believe me, of course. Daniel had this habit of quietly observing until he decided to do something about it. He sat down next to me, placed the cup of tea in my hand, and said, "You've been tense all week. You should relax a bit before you crash," I laughed under my breath. Easier said than done. Then, out of nowhere, he said jokingly, "Want me to give you a shoulder massage or something?" "Might help." I remember how I laughed, that kind of awkward, unsure laugh. But honestly, the idea didn't sound bad. My shoulders felt like rocks, and my mind felt worse. "Sure," I said finally, half laughing. "Why not?" He moved behind the couch and started gently pressing his thumbs into my shoulders. It wasn't anything unusual, just a friendly gesture, simple and kind. But after the first few moments, I realized something. It wasn't just my body that had been holding tension. My mind had been too. As he worked through the knots in my shoulders, I felt this unexpected wave of comfort, the kind that comes when you finally let yourself stop pretending that you're fine. I closed my eyes, took a slow breath, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel alone. The room was quiet, except for the hum of the fridge and the faint rhythm of the rain outside. Every now and then Daniel would ask, "Better? Or too much pressure?" And I'd answer softly, "No, it's good. It was innocent, completely normal." But somewhere between those quiet minutes, something changed. Maybe it was the warmth of the moment. Maybe it was how safe I felt. Or maybe it was because I hadn't felt this kind of closeness in a long time. The kind that doesn't ask for anything. The kind that just exists. I could feel my heart beating faster than usual. Not from anything happening, but from something I didn't understand. It wasn't attraction in the usual sense. It was emotional. A strange awareness that someone was there, truly there, when I needed it most. He stopped for a moment, resting his hands on my shoulders, and said quietly, "You've got to take care of yourself, man. You can't keep burning out like this." His voice was low, calm, almost grounding. I nodded but didn't turn around. For some reason I couldn't meet his eyes. I didn't want him to see the emotion that was starting to build up, a mix of gratitude, sadness, and something else I couldn't name. I whispered, "Thanks. I needed that." He smiled, though I didn't see it. "Anytime," he said simply, before stepping away. That should have been it. Just a small moment of kindness between two friends. But when he left the room, I sat there for a while, still quiet and a little confused. Why did that moment feel so heavy? Why did it leave me thinking long after it was over? I wanted to brush it off, tell myself it was nothing. But deep down I knew something had shifted. Not in him, in me. Because when you've been lonely for too long, even a small gesture can feel like sunlight after months of rain. And sometimes, that warmth becomes something you never meant to feel. That night, I lay in bed replaying every word, every small silence. I didn't understand what was happening inside me, only that a door had quietly opened, and once it did, there was no going back. The next few days after that night felt different, though neither of us said anything about it. It wasn't awkward exactly, just quieter. There was an unspoken awareness between us, something hanging in the air that we both noticed but pretended not to. Daniel and I still laughed, still shared dinners, still watched late-night shows together. But the silences between the jokes were longer now. Every so often, I'd catch him looking at me, and when our eyes met, one of us would look away first. It was harmless, I told myself. Just my imagination, just my mind reading too much into something simple. But sometimes the smallest things speak the loudest, like when his hand brushed mine when we both reached for the remote, or when he said my name a little too softly. Those moments felt like sparks landing on dry ground. A week later, I came home after another rough day. My partner and I had argued again, the same. Conversation that always ended the same way. Distance. Silence. Call that ended with, "We'll talk later," though we both knew we wouldn't. When I walked into the apartment, Daniel was sitting at the dining table, reading something on his laptop. He looked up and smiled, the kind of smile that felt like a reminder that someone cared. "You look like you had a long day," he said. "Something like that," I replied. Forcing a smile, he nodded, closed his laptop and asked, "Want to talk about it?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to. Another part of me knew I shouldn't. But loneliness makes you reach for comfort in ways you never planned to. We talked. Or maybe I talked and he just listened, quietly, patiently, without judging. He always had this calm presence that made you feel safe enough to be honest. After a while, the room grew quiet again. I leaned back on the couch and sighed. "My shoulders are killing me," I said, half joking, half exhausted. He smiled, that same smile from before. "Need another massage?" I don't know why I said yes. Maybe I just wanted to feel something good for a change, something that didn't hurt. He moved closer, his touch gentle and careful like before. It was familiar, but also not. This time I could feel the tension building, not in my muscles, but in the air between us. No one said a word. The rain outside tapped softly against the window, just like that first night. My thoughts grew quieter, replaced by a slow awareness, the sound of breathing, the warmth nearby, the closeness that felt both comforting and dangerous. It wasn't what he did. It was what I felt. I felt seen. I felt noticed. I felt like someone understood what I hadn't been able to say out loud. His hand slowed, then stopped. When I looked up, he was already looking at me. For a few seconds, everything stood still, no sound, no movement. Just that silent pull between two people who suddenly realized they were standing at the edge of something they couldn't explain. I should have said something. I should have moved, laughed, changed the subject, anything. But I didn't, neither did he. That was the moment. The one that changed everything. Because the truth is, infidelity doesn't always begin with intent. Sometimes it begins with loneliness, comfort, or a moment of weakness. It begins when you let someone see a part of you that was meant to stay hidden. After that, we both pulled back, almost at the same time. He stood up, rubbing the back of his neck, eyes down. I stared at the floor, feeling the weight of what almost happened, or maybe what already had, in a way words couldn't define. He said quietly, "I'm sorry." "I didn't mean to—" "I know," I interrupted softly. "It's okay, but it wasn't okay. We both knew that." The rest of the evening passed in silence. I went to my room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed, my heart racing. I wanted to tell myself it was nothing, that I was just imagining things. But deep down, I knew that something inside me had already crossed a line. I stared at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what I was feeling. Guilt, confusion, longing, relief, all at once. Part of me missed my partner. Or maybe I just missed the version of myself that used to feel certain. But another part of me, the part that had felt seen and safe for the first time in months, didn't want to let go of that moment. It wasn't love, not yet. It wasn't betrayal, not completely. It was something in between, the space where hearts wander when they're searching for comfort in the wrong place. And as I lay there in the dark, I realized something I wasn't ready to admit, that no matter how much I tried to ignore it, nothing between us would ever feel the same again. The next morning, everything felt different. The sunlight that usually slipped softly through the curtains now felt harsh, almost accusing. I woke up early, long before my alarm, with a heaviness in my chest that I couldn't shake. When I stepped out of my room, Daniel was already in the kitchen, making coffee like he always did. Except today he didn't look at me. His usual small talk, his casual jokes, gone. The air was thick with unspoken words. "Morning," I said quietly. He nodded without turning around. "Morning." The clink of the spoon against the mug was the only sound between us. I sat down at the table, pretending to check something on my phone, just to avoid looking up. I could feel the awkwardness in every second that passed. Finally, he placed a cup of coffee in front of me and sat across the table. For a long time, neither of us said a word. The silence was louder than any argument could have been. "I think we should talk," he said finally. I nodded. "Yeah, probably." He took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the coffee. "Last night, I don't know what that was, but I didn't want to make things weird or hurt anyone. I stopped him gently. "You don't have to explain." "I know," he looked up, surprised by how calm I sounded. But the truth was I wasn't calm at all. I was confused, guilty, and strangely sad, not just about what almost happened, but about what it revealed about both of us. He nodded slowly. "It's just, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable." "I don't," I said. I paused, trying to find the right words. I think we both needed something last night. Not that, just to not feel alone for a moment. He exhaled, as if those words had been sitting on his chest too. "Yeah," he whispered, "exactly that." We sat there quietly again, sipping our coffee, both pretending that things would go back to normal. But we knew better. Once a line is blurred, you can't unsee it. Later that day, I got a text from my partner, short, simple, and filled with the usual warmth that had been missing for weeks. "Hope you're doing okay. Miss you." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "Miss you too." And I meant it, but not in the way I used to, because now I wasn't sure who I missed more. Them, or the version of myself that hadn't yet complicated everything. That night, Daniel and I barely spoke. We stayed in our rooms, doors closed, pretending we both had work to do. The apartment felt smaller somehow, like the walls themselves remembered what we were trying to forget. A few days turned into a week. The distance grew, quietly, respectfully. No anger, no tension, just space. The kind that happens when two people silently agree that stepping back is the only way forward. I started spending more time outside, reconnecting with old friends, trying to repair my relationship. But even as I did, a part of me kept replaying that night in my head. Not because of what almost happened, but because of what it meant. It wasn't just about attraction or emotion. It was about vulnerability, about how easy it is to mistake comfort for connection when your heart is starving for affection. One evening, I found Daniel sitting on the balcony watching the sunset. I joined him quietly. We didn't say much, just sat there with the kind of silence that finally felt peaceful again. After a while, he said softly, "You ever think about that night?" I didn't have to ask which one. Sometimes, I said honestly, but not in the same way. "I think I just learned from it," he nodded, still looking at the sky. "Me too." There was no need for apologies anymore. We both understood. That night had shown us parts of ourselves we hadn't seen before. Not because we were bad people, but because we were human. People make mistakes. People get lonely. People reach for warmth, even when they know it might burn them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a quiet sense of acceptance. The guilt had softened into understanding. Sometimes the hardest lessons come wrapped in moments you wish you could undo. But those moments are also the ones that remind you what kind of person you want to be. I stood up, ready to head inside. Before I did, I said, "Thanks, Daniel. For everything, and even the hard parts," he smiled faintly. "Take care of yourself, okay?" "I will," I said. And for the first time in a long time, I meant it. Weeks later, I moved out, a quiet goodbye, no drama. Just two people who had shared something complicated and survived it. Every now and then, I still think about that night. Not with regret, but with clarity. Because it taught me that closeness and love aren't always the same thing. And sometimes, doing the right thing means walking away before the line disappears completely. And maybe that's what growing up really is. Learning to forgive yourself for the things you felt, but never meant to happen.